My name is Andy Fletcher. I work for Castlereagh Macquarie County Council. My position there is the Senior Biosecurity Weeds Officer. I absolutely love my role. The biggest part of my role has been around Hudson Pear, which has infested the area pretty well around the Lightning Ridge, Kambora, Garawan areas. When I first come on board, it was like, where do you start? Like it wasn't even like starting, it was like, where do you start? And I was really, really overwhelmed to go, what has gone on here? Like, how did it get to be where it is, and where can we follow up? A lot of work had been done with the biocontrol before I'd come on board, trying to set it up to get it into breeding areas and nurseries. I was just fortunate when I come on board, I met another chap in DPI, and we've just gelled to it with passion and just wanted it to happen. So it's not solely on me. A lot of work has gone into this many years before. I was just fortunate when I've come in. Can I say fell in love with this cactus? Not. And it's just worked, and it's been a long road. Seeing the results, you just skip, and just seeing the difference in the landscape, you just absolutely skip. Been so involved with it that it's not just about, oh, well, yeah, that's working now, we'll turn our back. It's just the passion you feel, like the words just can't explain it. Like the difference with landowners and community. There was actually a biocontrol introduced back in the 60s, which was more for rope pear. Would adopt onto the Hudson pear, but it wouldn't really do any damage to it. It was just surviving on the Hudson pear. So then to come and get this other one was really, really effective. But trying to educate people to go, you know what, this is the right one. And it was I think that was harder than actually dealing with the Hudson pear itself, because when people have heard about so many things over the years and then seen no change, it was very difficult to re-educate people's minds and how things were going to be. And at the same time, putting yourself out there, because it was still a long way to go to fully see them results that you're trying to put across as well. Everything's just worked out so well. It's just a story, I think, that will go on forever with what it's done out there in the landscape. It's an approach where, yeah, we still have chemical, but then we've still got the biocontrol as well. So that together has just made that difference in the landscape. I deal with a lot of weeds, but by far, and they all have their different impacts for whatever reason, whether it be, livestock or toxic and, to people. But in all of my time, I definitely classify Hudson pear as being the worst because of how fatal it can be, not just to animals, but to humans, how easy it is to spread, how easy it is to catch on to tyres, whatever is moving. And when you work with it for a fair while, like out in the field, and you see the damage it's done to animals, where the first thing, like say for a kangaroo example, it'll get on their body jumping by. The first thing they do is try and pull it out and then, say no more. It is just devastating to see. And because of the barbs on it, so you haven't just got your thought, like you've got your spike, which is really easy to see, but there's a clear sheath over that. So lots of times, and that's what happens with this, the livestock, it actually gets stuck in the skin. So even though you pull that spine out, there's a sheath that can stay in there. It's just nasty. It is nasty. When you get to the point where school children can't even ride their push bike, impacts it's made is just, it's unbelievable. So I've got 5 shires as well, and then to see how easy it is to spread into other shires which have a totally different climate to areas like Lightning Ridge. I've proven so many times it's not fussy where it grows. It really is not fussy. It will tolerate anywhere, to the point it doesn't even need soil or water. It will grow there. Then it'll grow into another area where you're getting, rain, and it'll go luscious. It's not fussy at all where it wants to grow. So that's another big thing I think that really stands out. If you've got something that adapts so well to climate, adapts to be pulled out of the soil to have nothing, you could pin this on the wall and it'll grow there. So for me, for something like a species to survive that well, I think it pretty much says it for anyone that this is the thing to watch. Regardless on how big your infestation is, this kind of species, it isn't something that you can just spray, use the appropriate chemical. and think, oh, well, I've sprayed that, I don't have to come back to it for a couple of years. This species is something that you kind of got to go back and monitor, like pretty much every 2 to 3 months. You turn your back on it and it can go again. And even in saying that, like spraying, you've got to really drench the whole plant. You leave off one little segment and that's enough for it to grow again. So once you've had it somewhere, it's continually going back. So, I've had new incursions of it along roadsides in different shires where I've carefully hand removed it, laid out tarps, hand removed it, entirely sprayed the area. And then I can go back in 3 months and check it, and you'll have new little shoots coming back up. So it's not even just to the eye on what you're finding. The root system, and depending on what sort of soil you've got, it'll just run underground. So even though you think, oh, well, I've pulled it all up here and I've sprayed this area, there could be the slightest root underneath that you can't see with the eye, and it'll come back up. It's pretty much, you're branded with it, I would say. And that brings me back into the biocontrol. It's doing that well in the landscape, that it's finding the tiniest little segments that the eye can miss in amongst grasses and other things in the landscape. So when you're spraying, they're the ones you miss, and they're the ones that doesn't take long to come back up. The biocontrol's done really, really well because it's finding all their tiny ones. It's decaying your really big ones, but it's finding these little tiny ones as well. And it's like, oh my gosh. And that's where more excitement comes, because you've dealt with it in the landscape, with chemical, and then you're doing it with the biocontrol. And, you can just see all of the difference. Another highlight with the biocontrol as well that we find in the field, where the biocontrol has done its own work on the Hudson Pear, we've got new native grasses coming through that you sort of haven't seen before, and you wouldn't get that back from chemical. Saying that, not to confuse what I'm trying to put out there, it's still a two-way approach, chemical biocontrol, but there's just more positives with the biocontrol when you can use that on bringing back your grasses and not putting chemical on there. Look, whichever way you look, there's a positive. It's a winner out there in the landscape, and that's what we're after. In my other shire in Coonamble, totally different climate, and that started about 20 years ago, where the lovely husband was visiting Lightning Ridge. His lovely wife on the farm in Coonamble loved cactus, so he's taken her some cactus home that she hasn't got. It grows, and then as you do, you cut it. And back in the day, then on the farms, you had your own tip on your property. You dig a big hole and fill that, and then fill it over, and that's exactly what happens. So I'll clean the garden, and this excess can go into the tip, and now it's on a gravel quarry, it's on Crown land, it's on other private properties, it's on roadsides from that one little present from that beautiful husband. That's what it's done. Just another example on how easy it can spread out there. So, yeah, so watch your cactus. Yeah, so we're with Summit, and we couldn't be without it. So we use that. That's our everyday tool. So whether it be going to an inspect an area where there's Hudson Pear, whether it be using chemical, whether it be releasing biocontrol, all of that information is collected onto Summit. Another positive thing with that, I could be working on these areas for, a few years, and then all of a sudden bring in another worker that I want to continue in them areas. Everything I've done in those years is collected. Like, we've got the data there in Summit, and they can just step in. Everything's there, down to, was there chemical used there? How much chemical? How big was the infestation? If you release bio, how many cladodes were released there? It's all in one little tablet that you take out on the field. We've got it there. That has been another tool as well. So it's not just chemical on, if we're just speaking Hudson Pear, it's not just a chemical, it's not just a biocontrol, it's collecting the data is one of the hugest things with it as well. So it's a piece of everything that brings the success. As important as everything is this data collection, and then that's vital for going on as well. So back in the time, it's probably something written on a bit of paper, and yeah, that would be all good for me. But what happens to that bit of paper, and then you've lost it all. You've lost all the data, and it's not just for a positive outcome. Sometimes things can be, we mightn't have a positive outcome, but you've still got that data. So you can go back to that data and go, oh, why did it go wrong? What was the weather doing? How big was this infestation? All of that contributes to having the success that we're finding out there. So it's just a magic tool. Our summit works for compliance. So we're using that device every day for inspections. We're collecting what sort of weed it is, whether we're back on the Hudson Pear or any sort of weed out in that landscape. We can collect that data. We can mark down exactly where it is on that property or that roadside, whichever the area may be. We're recording what weed it is. There might be multiple weeds, the density, you're pinpointing it, you can do polygons, you can do whatever you want. It's in your hands and easy to use. So you've pretty much collected everything. You've got your date, your time of the year, you're recording what condition that plant's in. You can even take your photo if you want while you're standing there. You've got every single thing on this one little device. The best thing is, like I said, another user can come or another field operator can come. They've got that same information as if they were standing there with you 2 years ago. And that's magic. You couldn't be without it. With Summit, I can pick it up and, like I said, you can ask me 100 questions about a certain property or roadside or weed. And it's like, well, here it is. With that initial inspection, perhaps there was a re-inspection 6 months down the track. And then you'll go, well, the infestation's gotten a bit less. I can see here the owner's done a treatment and he's done his boundary. Your information's with you. That is your tool, and it makes your job so much easier to get through. I fall for it so much more that I love it for the fact that I've got 5 shires and we're really, really spread out. I love the fact that each worker in their shires are going about their daily requirements, but I can be in another shire and jump on and see exactly what they're doing. They can synchronise, or the tool is just great. If I didn't have this tool, I'm jumping in a vehicle and I'm driving 2-3 hours down the road to get to this next shire. And then you take that trip back and then you've got to get on with your day. It just saves time. Communication with it is terrific. And at the end of the day, every bit of information that we're all out there collecting, it's all feeding through to our compliance, which then I feed through on to BIS, DPI. So it just all connects in together. It's really good. So we've come across a new weed that's coming to New South Wales from Queensland. Even though this new weed, until we go through weed risk assessments and all the necessities on finding a new weed, even with that said, Summit was still able to utilise. So we were still able to plot where this infestation is. We were still able to put notes in. So even though we weren't at the point with this new weed to actually put, in our drop-down box to go, sticky Florentina, we were still able to utilise everything else, and even you've got another box which is other. So we can still put all that information in there. And the best thing about that, when all of these risk assessments are completed and this new weed is added onto our New South Wales Weedwise, we've still got every other bit of information there to link in. Like we still had the system there to plot everything we needed to. So then once it's added on, it just all combined. It was as if that weed was already within the system when we first identified it. So yeah, that's great. The team, they're not just professional, they're friendly as well. But on top of that, as soon as you call, you've got that assistance. They're there for you and they care about your everyday business as much as you do. Your job is their job. The fact that you can call and they're straight there and, always open with whatever information, patience, the friendliness. Remember when we first sort of started off and it was like, oh, this is all kind of new, but user friendly and making you feel relaxed. And then before you know it, you're looking at more and more features that's available and they're there to walk you through it. So it's not just about, what tablet you've got or what system you're on. That team come in and really make that one big 100% to what you're using. So it's a great team.